Of all the videos in this series on building an app, these next three are the most important. If you go through all the work of building an app and you get rejected because you forgot to test the app, it is not only disappointing, it can also postpone your promised delivery date, which can make all parties involved in the app unhappy. In this video, we will look at every aspect of testing and troubleshooting your app before you submit it to Apple for review. I'll also discuss some common mistakes along the way and how to remedy them. Before you can start building an app, you will need to purchase a license. You cannot start testing the app without a license on either the iOS simulator or on a device. After your licenses are purchased, you can go into your Cloud Connect account and choose the settings icon at the top. Click on Account Balance and Redeem on the left. Then click on App Licenses in the Assets list. It is here that you can assign and choose the correct app you wish to assign the license to. Pick the correct application and choose the Assign button in the bottom right. The next thing you need to check is that your app is not in test. Go to the Titles section and click on the pencil to the right of the app you want to build. Scroll down and make sure that Test is not checked. If it is checked, click on Edit in the top right, then scroll down and uncheck Test. Now scroll to the top and save the modification. Next, you will need to get your certificate for use in App Factory. The certificate contains the license information as well as the bundle ID you defined, which will make the connection to both what you've set up in Developer and iTunes, and thus allow you to create an app for testing. Go to the Apps section. Click on the pencil to the right of the app you are creating. You will see your application certificate in the top right of the screen. Click on it to download it. Once it has been downloaded, you can drag this file into the bottom left corner of App Factory. Now that we are in App Factory, I'll give you a nice shortcut for updating your graphics contained in App Factory. If you have begun building your app, you will have noticed that when you update the graphics in the app, such as icons and buttons, you need to drag and drop them into your App Factory document. This would mean that you could look at the specs for, say, the icon, and then go into Photoshop and make the document size and then create the graphic for the icon. But here's a nice little trick that will save you the steps of making each file from scratch. Navigate to your saved App Factory document. Right-click it and choose Show Package Contents. Open the IMG folder. This folder contains all the graphics necessary to create your app. You can simply open each one of these files and edit them in Photoshop. Then close and reopen your App Factory file, and your new graphics will auto-populate the document. And here's another hint for those of you that are using the Wired Kiosk and want an example of the HTML that you need to host. If you go to your Applications folder and right-click App Factory iOS and choose Show Package Contents, you can go into Contents, Plugins, Templates. This is where all the templates are stored for use with our App Factory iOS product. In fact, you should know that if you opt for our subscriber database model, we will deliver you a custom template, and this is where you would need to put it. The Wired Kiosk was originally called the Matrix Kiosk. Pretty cool, right? You can right-click the Matrix Kiosk and choose Show Package Contents. There should be a numbered folder in there as well. Right-click the Matrix Kiosk in that folder and choose Show Package Contents again. In here, you will find examples of both the subscribed and not subscribed HTML. The subscribed HTML is what a user sees to buy a subscription. The button links must have the product IDs you've defined as in-app purchases for subscriptions in iTunes Connect. For example, if you had a 1-year subscription button and the product ID in iTunes Connect was 1-year sub with no spaces, this is how your button would be defined. Of course, You can have multiple buttons for many different subscription models. Once a person subscribes, however, they will now see the subscribed HTML, which could say thank you, or perhaps tell them about another magazine you publish that you think they might be interested in. Now for the testing. Once you have started adding your basic icons, you'll want to see what this actually looks like. The easiest place to start testing out the look and feel of your app is right on your own computer using the iOS simulator. In the top right of App Factory, you can choose the Export to iOS Simulator option. This will automatically launch the iOS simulator and open up your app. You will be prompted to add your device as a test device. Adding a test device and the ability to test your issues in your live app are covered in a later video in this series. Now that your app is in iOS Simulator, we can start with some basic troubleshooting. Number 1, can you see your issue? If you are building an Ave Reader or Ave Remote Reader app, please refer to those videos for the proper setup, since that setup is slightly different than an app that contains multiple issues. The first thing to check is that you have defined your issue in the Apps section, and make sure that you have defined a product. Remember the common thread rule. Step 1, you define your issue name and titles. Step 2, you define your product in the Apps section. If it is free, just pick that issue name you defined in titles and check free. If it isn't free, then you need to make sure the product ID matches what you have defined in iTunes Connect. And step 3 is to make sure that your issue type you made was also chosen in the Publish section, hence the common thread rule, the issue type. If you still can't see the issue, it could be one of two things. Number 1, the issue is still in test, or your release date is in the future. Since we are talking about building a product that isn't even in the App Store yet, you don't want to define your release date in the publishing section in the future yet, because Apple will have nothing to review and you will surely be rejected. Make sure your issue release date is in the past, and make sure you can uncheck test for the issue. If you can't uncheck test, it is one of two reasons. 1, you don't have a license, or 2, you didn't define the URL for the Zave, and you still have I will define my Zave later check. How about if you can see the issue, but it won't download and you get an error? This means either your file isn't where it is supposed to be on the server, or that server will not let that file type download automatically. If you paste your URL of the Zave file into a browser window, it should do two things. 1, automatically start downloading, and 2, it should return the final file size as it is downloading. If it doesn't, the progress bar will not work. Now that we've seen the basic troubleshooting and building in the simulator, let's move on to actually getting your app onto a device, such as an iPad or iPhone. Back to App Factory. In App Factory, you have an Export to Device button. When you choose Export to Device, you have 3 options. You can export a release, distribution, or ad hoc IPA. A release IPA is for testing on your devices you listed in the device section of developer.apple.com. That is what the provisioning profiles are made for. For the 2 device testing outputs, release and ad hoc, they reference your provisioning profile you made for that particular app and also embed the UDID of devices into the testing file. That means that only those devices you listed in the provisioning profile can actually load this app. The release IPA will allow you to test your in-app purchases. However, if you also want to test your push notifications at the same time, I recommend making an ad hoc IPA. An ad hoc IPA file will allow you to test purchases as well as push notifications. You may ask yourself at this point, then where do I use the distribution IPA? The distribution IPA is the IPA file you make for Apple when you are completely done testing and you are ready to submit your app for review. That is covered in the next video in the series. If you pick ad hoc from the list and you don't see a provisioning profile or certificate, then let me tell you what the common errors would be. Number one would be that the bundle ID you defined in AVE Publishing doesn't match the bundle ID in the provisioning profile. So no profiles would appear in the list. Number two would be that you made all of your certificates and provisioning profiles while you had App Factory open. App Factory only looks for certificates on open, so you will need to quit App Factory and restart it. Now you can generate your ad hoc IPA file. The name of the file in the Save As part of the window is actually the folder it will build, and the actual IPA file will be inside that folder. The name of the IPA file is defined by the name of the folder. Be careful to keep the naming simple. Just use all lowercase letters and don't put any spaces, underscores, slashes, or any other non-alpha characters. IPAs can be rejected for having these type of characters. Once you save the file, you will be prompted multiple times to allow. I recommend using the allow button and not the always allow. If for some reason no file generated within the folder at all, it usually means you most likely have duplicate certificates in Keychain Access. Go remove the duplicates and try again. You will need to restart App Factory. Now that you have an IPA, you can test it on your device. All you need to do is plug in your device that you entered for testing in the device section of developer.apple.com and launch Xcode. Once Xcode is launched, go to Window, Devices in the menu. Select your device on the left. If this is the first time you are testing an IPA file on your device, you will need to choose Use this device for development. You will then need to enter your development account username and password. To load the app, scroll to the bottom of the app list and choose the plus sign. Pick the IPA file you just generated. Your app will automatically be loaded onto your device. Once it is loaded, you can launch the app. The first time you launch the app, it should ask you if you want to allow push notifications. If it doesn't ask you that, you did not set up push notifications correctly, and you will need to redo them until you can launch the app and it asks you to allow for push notifications. Now that the app is loaded on your device, you can test the push notifications and in-app purchases.